All right, you are listening to the Brown Perspective. So, today is day 6 of the second impeachment of former President Donald Trump. And Eduardo, you're going to have to fill me in on some of the details because I had absolutely no interest in watching this second impeachment because the cynic in me just felt like it was being done for symbolic reasons and also for the wrong reasons. And I'd like to talk a bit about that with you. Maybe you can convince me that it's actually worthwhile spending our tax money to go through the second impeachment, that they're not going to be able to impeach him because they're not going to get the Republicans to go along with it. But what do you make of this so far?
Happy to educate you on why it's worth our time to hold the president, former president, accountable.
All right, let's do it. Let's see if you can change my opinion on this.
So, well, let's start with you. So, why do you think it's not worth the while, even though most people predict that he's not going to get convicted anyways?
Well,
I'll give you that. I'll give you that softball right there.
Well, exactly because of that. Because you can't. Well, first of all, we got to talk about what's the goal of the impeachment. Mm-hmm. Because you're not going to win impeachment. So what are they trying to achieve by doing it? He's already out of office. So do they want to prevent him from holding public office in the future? I mean, I could see that as a legitimate reason, but you don't even need to impeach him for that. As it turns out, I was reading this, that there's the 14th Amendment could be used to disqualify Trump from running for office again, because it has a section in there, and this gives a nice quick summary that says anyone who participates in an insurrection is ineligible for state or federal office. So just
but right now the main contention or the main defense for the Republicans wants is this is not a constitutional thing to do because he's no longer president, and the main point of impeachment is removing him. And second, it wasn't an insurrection, and even if it was an insurrection, they say that he did not necessarily motivate or incite the insurrection, that he was doing a political speech.
Well, that's the defense from the Republicans, but what I'm saying is that they would have had a higher likelihood of success had they just tried to use the 14th Amendment than trying to use impeachment. Right? And if they really cared about that...
You would need the impeachment process, I would think, unless they do a censure, which is basically just saying, hey, this person is bad, but that really doesn't have any legal force behind it. Uh-huh. So basically just taking up a resolution saying, we disapprove of the president's actions because of this and those reasons. And basically it's just a declaration. It's almost like the way that you declare a special day to celebrate something. So it's just obviously politically it's bad to be censured by your party or reprimanded by your party, but in real life terms, it doesn't really mean anything. And I don't believe a censure will be strong enough to make him not run or to prohibit him from running for office again. So I just may be wrong. But can I go back to why I think it's also important for this to happen?
Yeah, but let me just wrap this up though here, because just specifically talking about the 14th Amendment, and this article does a great job of highlighting it. Look, it says here, an impeachment conviction requires two-thirds of the Senate to vote for conviction, but Section 3 of the 14th Amendment only requires a simple majority vote. So again, if they wanted to argue that this was an insurrection, that's what they would need to argue for, and then they could go ahead and use this 14th Amendment. It seems like it would be a lot easier than to try to go the route that they're going with the impeachment. And this goes back to what I said in the beginning, that I'm not even tuning in because I understand the politicians are doing it because they see that they can get some benefit out of it. I think if they can portray this incident in a negative light, and they know that it's going to get enough attention out there for people to tune in, then they can say, okay, look, this is what happens when you vote in someone like Trump, and we're the good guys, we're the Democrats, we're looking out for your interest. And then the news media is interested in the impeachment because it gives them ratings. So I didn't want to participate in that. That's why I didn't really feel like following it, because at the end of the day, I knew that nothing was going to happen. And I was like, go ahead. I have something else to say, but go ahead with what you wanted to say.
Well, my question is how would the 14th Amendment be activated in this case? Would they need to do it outside in a court, or would it be a different procedure? So I'm not clear what the procedure would be different if they would have gone with the 14th Amendment versus an impeachment.
Well, I think they would be arguing for the process would be similar, where you have to go and make your case, and especially in this case, this would
be like an impeachment trial, just on different reasons, though.
It would be a trial, not impeachment, but it would be a trial to prove that he created an insurrection or that he participated in it. But the key difference is the number of votes that you need to achieve this.
You make a good point. So if one was it that the Democrats didn't realize and didn't take the procedural route that would have given them the best result, or the ability to actually convict them, or was it that route was less effective than an unsuccessful impeachment, because maybe the force of that would have been more legally bounding, right? So I think that's what I need to understand, and we should consider, like, why didn't they go? Because my assumption is that whoever the Democratic parliamentarians knew about, and lawyers, and they have constitutional lawyers who are both members of Congress themselves, and also staff members who really understand this stuff. So if they made a political calculation to go for impeachment rather than the 14th Amendment, there must be a reason, and whether that reason is justifiable or not, then I guess that's up for debate as well.
I think it's a big part of it is perception. Again, they're trying to milk this event as much as they can, because they think that it's going to translate to more people distancing themselves from Trump. Maybe not the hardcore supporters, Trumpers, like these guys right here, but maybe those moderate Republicans that would have voted for Trump as a protest vote, or even progressives or liberals. Maybe they're trying to go for those to say, look, this is what happens when you go for a demagogue like this guy. The Democrats care about you. We're going to impeach him to let the world know that this is unacceptable. And that could be the only benefit, or one of the benefits that I see from it. So, the optimist in me thinks that the Democrats know what they're doing, and that, as you mentioned, that there's a really good reason why they chose the route of impeachment. But the cynic in me looks at the other routes that they could have taken, and that's why to me, it doesn't add up. It's more symbolic. It's more for political gain, as opposed to actually achieve something like preventing Trump from running for office again in 4 years. I initially thought that they were going to use that incident to do that, but now it doesn't look like they are going for that. And so I'm wondering if in 4 years he's just going to run again, if the Democrats and the Republicans don't find a way to keep him from it. And given that they have this has been handed to them on a plate, that they're not following it, meaning the 14th Amendment, and only needing a simple majority vote. So I don't think they're going to prevent him from running again in 4 years. And the other thing that I'll mention before we get too far along is Ralph Nader said this long ago, years ago now, that if they actually wanted to impeach Trump, they could have gone after him on day one, because he violates the emoluments clause. And because he refused to distance himself from his private businesses when he became the president. So it was a conflict of interest there. And there's different sections of it. There's a foreign emoluments clause, and which prohibits the president from participating in any activity that would result in profit, gain, or advantage using the office of the presidency. And Trump very clearly did that. Let me read you the beginning here. Uh, so he chose to retain ownership and control of his sprawling business empire, a move that went against both long-standing historical practice and the advice of career government ethics officials. They could have gone after him on day one with this. They chose not to. They went after him for things that they knew that they weren't going to be able to use to impeach him. So this is why I question the motives of the actual motives of why they're impeaching him.
No, so I disagree with you on that point, and I think the reason why this reason wasn't strong enough for impeachment is because the officials in Congress who are benefiting from this corruption are not going to vote. It's going to be hard to prove this, right? And yes, there's some evidence that they could point to, but it would be very difficult and require like a legal battle to get those financial records and do all those things that would show. And even if it was evidence that they that they could show, you know what, he's benefiting from this, but I think that they would have turned a blind eye to that because in some ways that's what politics is about. You attach yourself to the winning horse, and your value, your political connections, your money in some instances becomes better because you're attached to that candidate. And I think the impeachment, and let me try to bridge what's going on in the Senate trial, and also try to channel my best AOC in terms of about this trial is beyond politics. So it's not just about this political exercise and political theater. I mean, a large part of it is that. But the other part of it is also like, can we reprimand a man for causing and motivating the type of pain and hurt that happened? And when you saw the images that the managers from the Democratic Party from the House were presenting in terms of the evidence of how the rhetoric from this president since day one to January 6th, how all that led to that particular incident, and how much pain was caused, how much violence was caused, and also how close they were to like physically harming Vice President Mike Pence and some of the other folks who they were going after. So this trial, and I think part of the reasons why the Democrats decided to go very large with this impeachment is because it allowed them to present the case like, look, this is what this president did, and he needs to be held accountable and responsible both legally and politically.
Let me respond back to the impeachment and whether or not you could have gotten him on the emoluments clause. So, yeah, that had a certain probability of winning, but the other two times that they impeached him, it's the same thing. They knew that they weren't going to be able to, right? So, because you said, why go that route if there's a small chance that it's going to succeed? Well, the other two times that they tried to impeach him, it was like virtually a 0% chance that they would be able to get him. So it's like, if we're going to be consistent, then it's the same. It would have been the same, no different the other two times. Yet they chose to try to impeach him for two other things that were like a stretch. If you really wanted something concrete, you could have just gone for this, for his business dealings. And in response to what you're saying about AOC and sending a message, look, I see that argument, but now after the fact, everyone is focusing on Trump. If you're gonna come down hard on this event and blame Trump for it, well, where's the blame for CNN and the news media that gave him free airtime for his entire presidency, even before, when he was spouting all that hateful rhetoric? Where's the accountability for everyone else that used them to get ratings or to get people to vote? Like, everyone benefited from this guy, and now they're just trying to discard him. And I'm not even defending him. I'm just saying that there's a lot of hypocrisy there that I see, and that's why it's hard for me to buy into the idea that these procedures that they're going right now with the impeachment, that they're somehow born out of a sense for justice and a sense that we need to protect the American people and that we care so much about these things. Like, if they really cared about the horrendous things that Trump is doing, they should have gone after him for his support of Saudi Arabia, which they have a blockade on Yemen. They're starving people. There's a famine. So if we're gonna talk about things that are ethical, things that shouldn't be done, and if we're going to be consistent, then let's be consistent across the board. This is very selective when it comes to targeting and to trying to impeach him, and then to say that we're impeaching him because we care. We want to send the message that we won't, that this is not acceptable behavior for a president. Well, what about the other things that are not acceptable? See, so there's no consistency there. So it's just hard for me to not look at this and say, I don't buy it. I don't buy the justification. It's all just, to me, at the end of the day, it just feels like just a political move, the political calculation.
Yeah, I mean, but the sad reality is that, American and the American electorate doesn't care about the atrocious war that's happening in Yemen. That's not close to them. Not a lot of them are impacted personally because they don't have uh, folks fighting to it. In any case, people are benefiting from war. They're
Mm-hmm.
benefiting from the sense that, oh wow, the U.S. and its allies are still the power to be. They're creating jobs, sending ammunition, supplies to those folks, building airplanes and keeping people employed here. So I think that in general, the American electorate is not attuned to what's going on in the world. And I guess in the near future we can have a conversation about that and how the fact that that U.S. imperialism, the reason that most of us are okay with it is because we benefit from that, and also because it doesn't affect us personally. And I think to the other points, the emoluments clause, again, that's such an archaic thing. And some of the other things that you mentioned, you also need like the political and the public attention to try to make a case out of it, because you need to have enough people seeing it and
Mm-hmm.
believe in it, and having the opportunity to convince people of your view in order to make it a successful effort, at least to win in the court of public opinion, which is probably the most important court. It's the most important court for the politicians, for the
Mm-hmm.
parties, and to the news media. And to your point, I think some of the news media has acknowledged their contributions and how they helped, and how in some ways they provided this president a platform. And they try to acknowledge that. And to your point, I don't think they've gone um, far enough to really atone for the sin of giving this speech and he supported the type of platform that they gave, which now they're trying to little by little trying to take back. I know that this week or the week before, there was also the censure or the removal of that of was it Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, because of her
And
support of QAnon.
yeah, QAnon. And for me, like, I have issues with that. Like, yes, she's saying some crazy stuff, but then what happens to the people who voted for her in her district? Who's going to be representing their voice? Who's going to be representing them in Congress? It will be remiss if I don't point out that that's the exact situation that people in Puerto Rico are facing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a voice and they don't have a vote in the U.S. Congress, even though they're American citizens.
Yeah, it's so true. So, in parting, I'll just say that it rings hollow to me when I hear that the politicians are doing it because Trump is to send the message that that type of hate speech and behavior from Trump that is not acceptable for a U.S. president, and then they turn a blind eye to all the other things, especially when it comes to international policy. So that's really there's no consistency there. So that's why it rings hollow for me. Any
Mm-hmm.
closing thoughts on this so we can wrap it up?
Yes, I think for me it's beyond that. I think it's also about the symbolism, and like so many things in our history, the symbolism is very important, and symbolism and little moral victories and legal victories get you to the result, right? So I think that yes, Trump may not get convicted, but at least symbolically we tried to hold him accountable for his actions. Just in the same way that back in the 60s, it was illegal for black people to vote and do things that were legal to them, but they fought and they knew they were going to lose. They knew they were facing a biased a biased system, but they still persevere because they knew that even if they lost then, they were making little progress to hopefully eventually being able to get a larger win. So obviously not they're not the same situation, but in some ways just highlights the importance of symbolism and of getting the domestic audience, and in some instances, getting the international audience to support you and to help you build the political pressure to bring about change.
All right, we're gonna have to leave it at that. I have some things to
Woo! Too
say,
deep for
but
you, baby. Too
what?
deep.
What's that?
That we went too deep. Too deep, too soon.
We'll have a follow-up discussion at some point. Unfortunately, we're out of time for this segment, but we'll leave it at that. Thanks for the input. All right.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you listening, if you enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective on YouTube. We are also on Instagram and Twitter. Nos vemos.
Ciao.